Hello there, Jorbs here, coming at you with another Spireside chat. We're talking about some of the cards for the fourth official character of the game, the Watcher, who's out on the 14th of January. I've talked a little bit about the Retain mechanic, talking about the cards Protect and Carve Reality already. I want to talk about Meditate, which is sort of a unique card. It's hard to compare this to any card on any of the other three official characters. So this is a skill, and for 1 energy, it lets you put a card from your discard pile into your hand, retain it, enter Calm Stance, and end your turn. So retaining the card means that you have it available for you next turn. It doesn't give the card the retain keyword, so you only have it available next turn, and then you'll discard it if you don't use it next turn. Entering Calm means that you go into Calm Stance, which interacts with some other cards. Like Water is a huge one to be thinking about here. You want to end your turn in Calm Stance for Like Water to give you a huge amount of block. And Calm Stance also means that you get 2 extra energy if you exit the stance later. And then this card ends your turn, which usually isn't that big a deal. This is a different thing. This isn't something that you'll be used to from Ironclad Silent or Defect. Generally, it's okay to play Meditate as the last card of your turn. I do want to point out, though, that there are other cards, like Conclude also ends your turn, or Volt is a card that ends your turn as well. It gives you an extra turn after this one, but it does end your turn. And so you can run into situations where that downside does matter. Another situation is you can just have 2 Meditates in your hand, and you'll only be able to play 1 of them. I would say that this card is close to the power level of Well-Laid Plans for Silent. And if you've seen me play Silent a lot or heard my thoughts about Silent a lot, you'll know that I think Well-Laid Plans is very, 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 very strong. Well-Laid Plans was semi-recently nerfed from 0 energy to 1 energy. And I think it's still a card that I almost always will take the first time that I see it. Even over most other good silent cards that exist. It's just very, very powerful to be able to choose to hold on to a card that you need next turn. It's very powerful to be able to plan ahead like that. It enables you to put together combos of cards, like if you want to perhaps play Burst on one of your skills, you can hold on to Burst until you draw the skill that you want to burst. Or if you want a Nightmare to get 3 more copies of your skill, you can do that. It's very, very strong to be able to enable combos with this card, and also you can just hold on to like a block card. You can look at your draw pile and see that there are like 8 cards left in your draw pile and there aren't any block cards in it, and think, oh gee, I'm probably going to need a block card then. And you can just use Well-Laid Plans to hold on to a block card. Or if you look at your draw pile and there are 5 block cards out of 8, you can be like, oh, I might need an attack. I might not need to actually block that much, so I might as well hold on to an attack. And so it smooths out what you can do and does a great job of letting you spend energy on the most important thing to do every turn by making sure that you can hold onto the cards which you're going to need to spend energy on for that. So when we look at Meditate, Meditate's a little bit more dynamic than Well-Laid Plans is, insofar as that it's a skill, it only does that for next turn. And that is definitely a way in which it is weaker than Well-Laid Plans. If Meditate let you choose a card like every turn, or whatever, if it was a power that let you choose a card from your discard pile every turn, that would be absolutely insane for sure. But Meditate's actually stronger than Well-Laid Plans in a couple of other ways. One way that Meditate is stronger than Well-Laid Plans is that it enters Calm Stance for you. And so, like with Like Water, being a Calm Stance can be very beneficial. If you have like 3 Like Water pluses in play, all of a sudden you're just blocking for 21 just for having that stance, which can be one of the ways to get your block up to levels required for winning late game on Watcher for sure. And the other thing about Calm Stance is that when you exit Calm Stance, you get 2 energy. And so you can actually use Meditate as an energy creating card. If you upgrade Meditate, you get 2 cards from your discard pile and retain them. If you have 2 Meditates in your deck, you can regularly be using 1 Meditate to grab the other Meditate. And you can often, if the card draw happens in the right order, set up a situation where you get to play Meditate every single turn. And then with your other card that you're getting from Meditate, you can be getting something like an upgraded version of Eruption, which costs 1 energy to enter Wrath. And with just that starter card that's upgraded and a couple of meditations, you've created a combo for yourself where every turn you get to leave Calm Stance, giving you 2 energy. You double the damage dealt by all of your attacks for the rest of the turn. That's like having played a Phantasmal Killer last turn or something for Silent, I guess, could be a comparison. And then at the end of the turn, you don't have to deal with the downside of this Wrath, because the enemies don't get to attack you and deal double damage while you're in Wrath, because you're playing Meditate at the end of the turn and entering Calm Stance again. And so, Watcher as presented, it very much looks like you're meant to be juggling in and out of stances a lot. You want to be in Wrath stance while you play attacks, but not be in Wrath stance when you get attacked. And some runs for Watcher that's more true than others. There are definitely runs for Watcher where you don't actually make use of the mechanic all that much. There are runs for Watcher where you do make use of like the Wrath mechanic, but then like you just stay in it a lot of the time, which can be really interesting. But one of the things that I don't love that much about Watcher is that in order to juggle in and out of stances, like you sort of only need Meditate Plus and Eruption. Meditate is so strong that it turns on that entire mechanic by itself without needing any of the other cards in the card pool. And all of a sudden, you can reasonably be dealing double damage with your smites and stuff, and doing so in a very safe way, and doing so in a very consistent way, just like that. Another thing that I talk about with well-laid plans is that well-laid plans enables combos of cards. And we talked about that Eruption Meditate combo a little bit. I don't think that Watcher has as many like true combos as Silent does. Watcher doesn't have stuff like Burst Catalyst exactly. Perhaps the biggest combo that Watcher has would be Omniscience. Omniscience combos very well with itself. When you play Omniscience, you can choose another Omniscience in your draw pile, and then you can choose 2 other cards to play twice, which can do an incredible job of setting you up for the rest of the fight, or even just end the fight right now. If you do something like play a card that makes Ragnarok deal more damage than play Ragnarok twice, then boom, everything's dead sort of thing. Or you can play like a couple of wishes and get a bunch of plated armor or strength for the rest of the fight type of idea. So when Watcher does very combo-y things, they often feel sort of like that. And Meditate doesn't do that great a job of enabling those, I wouldn't say. One of the big things about Omniscience is that it looks for a card in your draw pile. And so you're sort of having to play Omniscience when you draw it, because otherwise you're risking drawing the card that you want to double play. And this idea of like drawing Omniscience, but then you discard it, and then the next turn you get it back with Meditate, and then the turn after that you finally get around to playing Omniscience, that's a bit slow. It's a little bit more awkward than what well-laid plans can do with cards that Silent has to combo with. And so I would say, in general, you do have access to like this sort of Eruption easy combo with Meditate, but it's a bit harder than it is on Silent to put together a bigger combo than that. And so Watcher feels like even though she gets that combo going and gets it working consistently, you still have to like play the fight pretty carefully and still have to have other stuff going on if you want to actually be strong enough to beat the Act 3 and 4 bosses. Definitely make sure that you're grabbing the powers like water, and the cards like Talk to the Hand, which are helping you block for a lot, and the card like Wave of the Hand, which weakens everything for you. Make sure that your deck does have enough scaling in it to kill bosses, because just putting together that like cute sort of Eruption combo type thing isn't going to do it by itself. When talking about retain cards, I've been trying to remember to mention Establishment, and it's worth mentioning that Meditate works very, very well with Establishment. when you meditate and hit a card and it gets put in your hand, that card will have retain for 1 turn, and so it will reduce its cost by 1. Not only has retain for 1 turn, it doesn't keep reducing its cost on later turns unless you meditate it again. But this is a way to take a deck which might have awkward cards to afford. Maybe you only have 3 energy. Maybe you have quite a lot of card draw in your deck, with cards like Cut Through Fate, which draws cards, or Inner Peace, which draws cards, or Empty Mind, which works very, very well with Meditate because it's a card which lets you exit your calm stance to get an extra 2 energy if you need a card to help you do that. Meditate can help you get those cards working. And so Meditate, and actually Deva Form as well, which I'll talk about a little bit here. Meditate plus Establishment or Deva Form on its own can lead you into situations where the way that Watcher wins a boss fight is by scaling the number of cards she can play every turn. In Deva Form's case, you're going to gain more energy every turn. In Establishment's case, you're going to reduce the cost of the other cards so that every turn the energy that you gain goes further. And that's a bit different from anything that the other characters do. I think the closest comparison would be to Corruption with Ironclad, but Corruption, like, it exhausts the skills, so you do run out of skills eventually, which means that you have to play Corruption in a very specific way. Watcher, there's no like limit really on how far this goes. And so if you have a Meditate and you manage to pick up an Establishment, one way that you might want to plan on winning is to plan on going pretty long in boss fights and like actually end up with like some sort of infinite card draw sort of cycle. Make your Empty Mind cost 0, make your Sanctity, this is like Watcher's version of Backflip sort of, make this card cost 0. Just get to a point where you load up on enough card draw that you're playing a lot of low impact cards to a point where you're able to win a boss fight. It's a very unique form of scaling, which I feel is almost only available to Watcher, because you don't generally actually go for an infinite combo, because you don't have like exhaust really, so you can't get rid of all of the cards in your deck to only have the pieces of the infinite that you need. It's more like you just like have enough value cards that you just spam more and more and more of, that eventually you get to a point where you're spamming so many that you win. And yeah, Meditate's definitely an enabler of that as well. So thought I should probably point that out when talking about Meditate. So we talked about how Retain's very good. We talked about comparisons to well-laid plans. We talked about being able to play the card that you want on the turn that you want it. I think I mentioned that. We talked about enabling combos and how Meditate very easily combos with the Eruption starter card. And we talked about how Meditate can be a source of scaling for Establishment decks to a point where it's actually strong enough to win boss fights off that mechanic. Hope you enjoyed the talk, and I will see you next time. Hope you're enjoying Watcher if you're getting a chance to play her.